Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Hello and welcome to the School of Love, the place where we learn practical tools based on scientific research towards improving ourselves, living life to its fullest, and contributing to the best of our abilities to the world around us. I am Dr. Maria Grajdian, and I'm a professor of media studies and anthropology at Hiroshima University. In today's video, I'll talk about Takahata Isao, one of the most important animation directors in history, as well as about the impact and significance of his animation movies. From the very beginning, I must emphasize the fact that this channel is not part of my educational and research activities at Hiroshima University. It is nonetheless part of my privilege, joy, and sense of duty to propagate and implement knowledge, information, as well as motivation and inspiration outside the limited framework of academic endeavors. Together, we can build up a better tomorrow for as many of us as possible. If you're new to the channel, at this moment I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. Thank you very, very much. This helps us not only with that mysterious algorithm which seems to dominate the YouTube galaxy, but also with contributing to the expansion of the community of humans doing their best to impact positively the world and those around them by discovering their authentic selves and living life wholeheartedly. Thanks again. With that being said, let's move on to today's topic, which is the animation director Takahata Isao and his animation works made in Japan and released by Studio Ghibli. Like popular music, consumerist technology, architecture, fashion, or cuisine, animation is a unique communication form in modern Japan, or at least used to be until recently. Ever since the first animation production made in Japan was released in the year 1917, what has come to be understood as Japanese animation has been continuously evolving, gradually turning into a highly attractive medium while simultaneously reflecting the complex, intricate relationships between state ideologues, technocrats, artists, and audiences. Animation productions are similar to high-value publications belonging to the genre of serious literature due to the fact that they depend uniformly on the creative power of individual artists and result out of a complicated editing and decision-making process, with the supreme goal of regularly showing up on the market according to a very tight schedule. On the other hand, they reflect the tension of commercially determined publications such as newspapers and journals. Within the international animation landscape, Studio Ghibli has become, throughout the past almost 4 decades, a symbolic icon of successful Japanese animation, which emerges as a constructive combination of aesthetic ideological visions and consumption-oriented compromises. As the epitome of an impactful cultural enterprise dealing with the production of cultural assets, namely animation works, sometimes also known as anime, the Japanese version of cartoons, Studio Ghibli's productions stand out due to their strong messages embedded in the medium of visual imagery, both aesthetically reflecting the reality and ideologically tackling urgent issues such as environmental pollution, social discrimination, the process of growing up, historical responsibility, the meaning and value of life, or love as a complex emotional paradigm. Ghibli, written in fact G-I-B-L-I and not G-H-I-B-L-I as Studio Ghibli is written, means in Italian hot desert wind, and was supposed to have the effect of a fresh wind reinvigorating the framework of Japanese animation. Studio Ghibli was grounded in the year 1985 by Takahata Isao and Miyazaki Hayao. Born in Tokyo on January 5, 1941, as the second son out of a total of 4 children, Miyazaki Hayao is regarded as one of the most successful and prolific animation directors of the world. After graduating from Gakushu University in Tokyo with a degree in economics, Miyazaki started his career in 1963 as frame animator at the Toei Doga Studio. In 1971, he moved together with Takahata Isao to Nippon Animation, and in 1978, he released his first television animation series, Future Boy Conan, or in Japanese, Shourai no Shounen Conan. 1 year later, in 1979, Miyazaki moved once again to Tokyo Movie Shinsha, where he directed his first animation movie, Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, or in Japanese, Rupan Sansei, Kariosutoro no Shiro. 6 years later, in 1985, in friendship and cooperation with Takahata Isao, Miyazaki founded Studio Ghibli. All animation movies directed by Miyazaki and released by Studio Ghibli have been extremely successful, both in Japan and worldwide, enchanting critics and general audiences and resulting in huge revenues at box offices. Both Takahata Isao and Miyazaki Hayao had already gathered experience in the field of animation and of the Japanese animation industry, which they subsequently employed in developing their own animation production company. Together with the so-called Takahata-Miyazaki combination, 2 more persons have been accompanying the Ghibli enterprise since its beginning and have been contributing to its astonishing success: the producer Suzuki Toshio and the composer Hisaishi Joe. Born on August 19, 1948 in Nagoya, in Aichi Prefecture, Suzuki Toshio is the main producer of Studio Ghibli and stands in Japan for one of the most powerful and influential producers. Miyazaki Hayao declared in an interview that without Suzuki, there would probably not be a Studio Ghibli to speak of. Following his activity as chief editor at the animation journal Animage, Suzuki moved in 1989 to Studio Ghibli and produced all animation movies released by Studio Ghibli ever since. Additionally, Suzuki co-produced the animation film Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, which was co-financed by Studio Ghibli. On the other hand, Hisaishi Joe was born on December 6, 1950 in Nagano and carried the real name Fujisawa Mamoru. He started his career as a composer of serial minimalist music during his undergraduate study at Kunitachi Music Academy in Tokyo. After the release of his first album, Information, from 1982, he was proposed as the composer for the Image album of Nausicaa from the Valley of the Winds. Miyazaki and Takahata as producer, so Miyazaki as director and Takahata as producer, were deeply impressed, so that they required Hisaishi the composition of the entire soundtrack of the movie. Later on, Hisaishi delivered the soundtracks for all of Miyazaki's works: Laputa, The Castle in the Sky from 1986, Kiki's Delivery Service from 1989, Porco Rosso from 1992, Princess Mononoke from 1997, and Spirited Away from 2001. Howl's Moving Castle from 2004, Ponyo on the Cliff from 2008, and The Wind Rises from 2013. And for Takahata Isao's last movie from 2013, The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Additionally, Hisaishi Joe is active outside of Studio Ghibli with his own individual compositional projects, as well as film and event musical enterprises throughout Asia. Within this quartet, the so-called Ghibli quartet, Miyazaki Hayao has been the one who has gotten most of, if not all, laurels throughout the years. The real engine inside Studio Ghibli, and the one who had initially discovered Miyazaki, who had influenced him decisively both as an artist and as a human being, and who eventually taught him the value and importance of social responsibility, was by all means, admittedly, Takahata Isao. A way more profound life experience, inner authority, insight into the human nature, diverse relationships, tireless perseverance, unbreakable assertiveness, goal-oriented persistence, and a very particular type of genius which enabled him to recognize the genius in others, are elements which impose Takahata Isao not only as the elder colleague and main catalyst of Miyazaki Hayao, as well as the co-founder of the Ghibli enterprise, but also as the one who, far more than Miyazaki, has been actively witnessing the history of modern animation and cartoons, and tremendously impacted it both aesthetically and ideologically, while profoundly helped shape it through a huge corpus of animated works. It is true, though, that Takahata Isao is virtually unknown outside of animation circles. Nevertheless, without him and his immense contribution, Studio Ghibli would not be what it is today, and possibly the worldwide animation phenomenon as such. Born as the youngest son of a 9-member family on October 29, 1935 in Ujiyamada, now Ise, in Mie Prefecture, Takahata, unlike Miyazaki, started his career from the very beginning as an animation director. In 1959, after the graduation from the most reputable Japanese university, the University of Tokyo, where he had majored in French literature, Takahata joined the newly grounded animation studio Toei Doga, later known as Toei Animation Studio, one of the most important names within Japan's animation industry, which was planning for the first time the production of animation movies. Triggered by the massive flop of Takahata's directorial debut, The Prince of Sun, Horus Great Adventure, in Japanese Taiyo no Oji, Horus no Daiboken, from 1968, regarded presently as one of the most impactful examples of Japanese animation, but also financially the biggest failure in the entire history of the Toei Doga animation, Takahata was compelled to leave the studio. Miyazaki worked as animator for this movie, for The Prince of Sun, Horus Great Adventure, and contributed with numerous ideas to the enhancement of the project, which made Takahata notice him as a promising and highly ambitious young man. Takahata and Miyazaki became friends when they joined the Animators Union at Toei Doga Animation, where Takahata was vice chairman and Miyazaki was chairman. During the next several years, Takahata directed 3 television animation series: Heidi, the Girl from the Alps, released in 1974, 13 Miles in Search of Mother, released in 1967, and Red-Haired Anne, also known as Anne of Green Gables, released in 1979, and 4 short movies: Panda, Little Panda from 1972, Panda, Little Panda, The Circus During Rainy Days from 1973, Jarinko Chie from 1971, and Gauche the Celeste from 1982. Here, Takahata tackled a topic which would accompany him throughout his whole life, that is, the destiny of parentless children and orphans. In the year 1984, Takahata produced Miyazaki's film Nausicaa from the Valley of the Winds, in Japanese Kaze no Tani no Nausicaa, which turned into an immense success and financially allowed both of them to establish the new animation studio, Studio Ghibli. Takahata Isao took over various occupations throughout his life: writer, producer, composer, scriptwriter, storyboard creator. But his main preoccupation was the direction of animation movies. His second major feature, The Grave of the Fireflies, in Japanese Hotaru no Haka, released by Studio Ghibli in 1988, is regarded worldwide as one of the most impressive animation productions of all times, marking, simultaneously, a decisive stage in the history of universal animation, transcending the overall framework of the war narrative. In the year 1991, Takahata's intimist naturalist film Memories Like Raindrops, better known as Only Yesterday, is released, a profound tale of social critique under the disguise of a romantic drama. The realistic epos, with an ironic ecological substrate, Pompoko, the Heisei Tanuki War, in Japanese Heisei Tanuki Gassen Pompoko, from 1994, became Japan's the best film of the release year 1994, as well as Japan's nomination for the category of Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. Takahata's next work, produced by Studio Ghibli, was the family comedy Ho Ho Kekyo, My Neighbors, the Yamadas, in Japanese Ho Ho Kekyo, Tonari no Yamada-kun, from 1999, which opened the path for digital animation mediating serious content. Eventually, Takahata's last work, the masterpiece The Tale of Princess Kaguya, in Japanese Kaguya-hime no Monogatari, from 2013, before his departure from this world for a better one on April 5th, 2018, was based on the oldest Japanese folk legend, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, in Japanese Taketori Monogatari, from the 11th century. The Tale of Princess Kaguya came into existence both as the final draw of an overwhelmingly enriching legacy and as the starting point for future animators, as it creatively combines digital technologies of design with very specific, intensely emotional layouts. Takahata Isao's films were mostly no particular successes at the box office, but nonetheless discrete artistic masterworks and milestones within the genre or animation. Ideologically, Takahata takes his distance from his younger colleague and friend Miyazaki Hayao. More than Miyazaki, Takahata had grasped very early on in his career the fact that audiences in present times do not need epic stories about heroes, dictators, and the whole new world after their demise, as colorfully represented in The Prince of Sun, Horus' Great Adventure, in an era full of evidences that the historical situation gets much worse after the demise of that very dictator. Rather, late modern cinema goers are looking for models of individual responsibility, which generates social cohesion. The second important thematic conglomerate in The Prince of Sun, Horus' Great Adventure, and Takahata's works talk about it. In a different manner than Miyazaki's characters, epic, archetypical shoujo heroines on the front line who are fighting for universal values, Takahata's characters are either orphans or desperate children, from The Prince of Sun, Horus' Great Adventure, until The Grave of the Fireflies, or quotidian citizens struggling to survive and to find their own ways through life, from memories like raindrops until My Neighbors, the Yamadas. A notable exception in Takahata's vision of social critique by means of artistic expression is his last movie, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, in which an extraordinary destiny is painted with clarity and compassion, while simultaneously transcending historical acuity into present-day uncertainties. Anchored in a clearly defined cultural reality, Takahata's characters are primarily concerned with individual survival in terms of rescuing one's own self as a very palpable entity. Humanity as an abstract concept is mostly presented as a diluted form of forgotten humanism carried by distant, cool decision makers who, in their quest for absolute and Übermensch-like ideas, ruin the lives of plain humans. In Takahata's conceptualization of the world, there are no fabulous victories or defeats, but solely human destinies, which in their very average substance, sometimes referred to by contemporary sociologists as wasted lives, for instance in Zygmunt Bauman, cannot turn into the main focus of social analysts. Stylistically and aesthetically, Takahata was influenced by Walt Disney, and more specifically by the early Disney works, released roughly until mid-1960s. He was also influenced by Yuri Nornstein, a Russian animator born in 1941, with his innovative approach to animation as a bidimensional simulation of reality. Furthermore, Takahata was influenced by Paul Grimaud's and Jacques Prévert's works, particularly by the animation film La Bergère et le Ramoneur, in English, The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, released 1950 until 1953, the mutilated masterwork destroyed by Grimaud and Prévert themselves, which appeared to Takahata as a valid alternative to Walt Disney's animation endeavors. Jacques Prévert's vision of rewriting the myth and legends through their creative adaptation to the present world and its reflection in the long-term cooperation with Paul Grimaud and the resulting animation works, among which Le Roi et l'Oiseau, in English, The King and the Mockingbird from 1980, is an outstanding example, inspired Takahata to look beyond the immediacy of contemporary world towards more universal representations of values and human experiences. Further influences stem from German Expressionism from mid-1910s until early 1930s, with its strong reaction against plain realism and the employment of extreme distortions to express inner emotional realities which differed greatly from what they seemed at the surface, and the dark, moody, disturbing ways to communicate with audiences. Further influences stem from Italian neorealism from mid-1940s until early 1950s, with its brutal depiction of poverty, injustice, despair among the working class members, and from the French New Wave, in French La Nouvelle Vague, from late 1950s until late 1960s, with its almost documentary exactitude of the displayed facts, with its quest for an ambivalence between subjective and objective realism, which leaves the questions and the ambiguities of the artistic production open to the viewer, while challenging any cathartic-driven expectations. In Takahata's last animation film, The references to classical Japanese visual arts such as emakemono, these are pictures crossed from Heian period between 794 and 1185, and ukiyo-e, which are woodblock prints from Tokugawa period from 1603 and 1868, appear consistently and highlight once more the subliminal tension between Japanese visual arts and Western visual arts, hinting at more profound layers of syncretism in the art of animation as a means to address the multidimensionality of life, not of reality, in the bidimensionality of representation, and to transcend it as a shared human experience. Altogether, the intricate stress ratio between animation as a medium and animation as a message, as well as the transitions it conveys from aesthetics to ethics and from ideology to imagination, find in Takahata Isao's works a powerful expression mode, reverberating beyond geographical boundaries. The neo-realistic aspects of Takahata Isao's works, nuanced by expressionist overtones, distinguishes him fundamentally from most animation products, which are composed to a staggering extent by fantasy structures. Neo-realist elements in Takahata's movies are, for instance, the almost obsessive emphasis on apparently insignificant details in the contemplative representation of quotidian events, for instance, the weekly church attendance, the activity of cleaning bottles as a means to earn money, or the daily field work in rural areas. The expressionist elements are obvious in the depiction of the results of the character's imagination. An example hereby is displayed in Memories Like Raindrops, in the scene in which little Taeko encounters her first love and subsequently, defying all laws of gravity, she starts to walk through the red air. The scene ends with Taeko softly landing into her bed, which is followed by a huge heart flying slowly out of the window of her room. Already, The Prince of Sun, Horus' Great Adventure, Takahata's aesthetic ideological manifesto, as well as the television animation series Heidi, the Girl from the Alps, 3,000 Miles in Search of Mother, and Anne of Green Gables, expose his preoccupation with the reality of the human existence as a shared experience. When someone dies, there is grief, sorrow, but also the continuity of life. As long as people stick together and take care of each other while putting in the effort not to lose themselves in the cruelty and unpredictability of the world, there is always tomorrow, and more importantly, the hope of a better tomorrow. In Jarinkochie and Gauche the Celeste, further elements in Takahata Isao's universe become clear. The dramaturgic vision gains logical depth. The protagonists acquire human credibility, honesty, and warmth. In his quest for the invention of the real, or in French, l'invention du réel, in the animated expression, Takahata urges the viewer of The Grave of the Fireflies to watch and witness the decline and unstoppable death of two innocent children, exposed to an inevitable fate, while world leaders are concerning themselves with such things as peace, patriotism, or the values of the Enlightenment. However, there is no hope and no salvation through human agents in this movie. On the other hand, Memories Like Raindrops shows a world doomed to an increasing disappearance as a result of aggressive emancipation politics and under the constraint of political correctness, while sweeping away in the process an entire galaxy of human hopes, ideals, and dreams. In my opinion, the last and possibly most important part of Taeko's story, the 27-year-old single main protagonist who works as an office lady, that is, a female employee in a Japanese company, and who tries to decide whether she wants to stay and live in Tokyo or whether she would like to start a new life in the countryside as a farmer's wife, is told during the end credits and needs no further comment. Furthermore, due to its ecological background, Pompoko, the Heisei Tanuki War, conveys with warm, positive humor the message that harmony is never an absolute state, and that moving along with the waves of time is perhaps the most suitable strategy, rather than resisting it, in an attempt to do the best out of one's given years of life. The pragmatic vision of the future allows the individual to develop, or even to discover, the ability to overcome the initial uncertainty and despair, so that one can find the wisdom, strength, and insight necessary to adapt to new circumstances. Similarly, the family saga depicted in Hoho Kikyo, My Neighbors the Yamadas, is an ode to the average life of quotidian social actors and their apparently insignificant events, displayed by Takahata with honesty and tenderness. Fully computer generated and drawn in manga style, that is Japanese comics, this film opens up far-reaching pathways for future animation artists and mediates simultaneously Takahata's most important belief, to which he adhered with unbreakable decisiveness in all his productions. Live wholeheartedly, as each ending is the chance of a new beginning within the circle of human existence. Lastly, the tale of Princess Kaguya reveals Takahata's preoccupation with perennial questions of decisions and regrets, of relentless returns and second chances, of the joy hidden in every moment, as the eternity of the universe unfolds freely, tacitly, mercilessly. Despite his far-reaching success, Takahata Isao stayed faithful to his humanist belief and is one of the few authors in history who could fulfill his artistic ideals within a commercial framework without, as so often the case, leaving burned fields behind. The profound truth of human existence does not hide in distant fantasy worlds as Miyazaki displays it, but at every single event of the quotidian reality. Hidden behind the strong, charismatic, media-friendly stature of Miyazaki Hayao, Takahata Isao's inconspicuousness used to seem challenging. I believe this is where the power and the fascination of his personality emerge from. Thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to welcoming you very soon again. Love and peace to you all.